Thank you very much, Chuck. We have time now for a few questions. I will take questions from the audience. Can we get the lights, please? Before we get into the audience, just a quick question I have here from the app. One from Mike and one for Laura, and then for you to maybe comment. The first one for Mike, and I will put both of them together, is about being prepared on resilience and growing resilience. How can we predict future climates better? And there is a stream of potentially collapse of the Gulf Stream or not. How can we do better at that? And the other one about the experience in Argentina with no-till. 35 years of maturity is fantastic. What were the first 10 years? How did they get to the first 10 years? And what worked then? And maybe start with Mike first.
Okay, there's always a question that comes up about the risks of the collapse of the Gulf Stream. I think my understanding of the latest science is it's unlikely to collapse in the near future, but it might just change its behavior, and that in itself will change some of our weather patterns. Personally, I feel that there are other priorities. That if a collapse of the Gulf Stream is a bit of a game over for Northern Europe, really. So I think it's best to focus on those things that we can actually really do things about. Obviously, I didn't mention, in terms of adaptation and mitigation, the first thing we need to do is just stop putting greenhouse gases up into the atmosphere. And changes in our climate. I showed the image of the Arctic melting. That's a fundamental change to the thermodynamics. That will have a much more immediate effect. We could be ice-free within the next 30, 40 years. That's pretty close. If the Gulf Stream closes, it's probably not going to happen for another 60 to 80, 100 years. So my priority is focus on the things that we really do know are already happening rather than might happen.
Mike, and can we get better at predicting those? Because you mentioned
Yes.
1 year is good, maybe 1 year is bad. And
Yeah, the global sort of meteorological sort of modelling ability is improving greatly. We understand much better now the relationships between, say, what happens when there's an El Nino or La Nina cycle, what's happening with other cycles around the world, the southern annular mode, the Indian Ocean dipole, all of these different flows of air and water around the world. We're much better at understanding those and understanding what the consequences and projecting into what does that mean in terms of seasonal forecasting. I'm fairly confident within the next 10, 15 years, we'll get pretty good at being able to understand what sort of growing seasons we're going to be facing. There will always be uncertainties. I mean, if you cast your mind back, those who can remember sort of 30, 40 years ago, the ability of the weather forecasters, you know, they had those little sticky magnets that were put up on a map, and quite often they would fall off, and there was a lot of skepticism about the value of weather forecasting. Now the value of our weather forecasting is really, really good. You can get onto your phone and look at the radar. You can see the storm that's coming over us now. Our ability to do that, and that capacity I think will extend to seasonal level forecasting, so that we can actually start making proper tactical decisions in the fairly near future. And that's also why I put up that image of the Our Smart Farm Time tool that I'm talking about, is that it will allow you as farmers to enter data to do modelling on your laptop, in your kitchen, on your kitchen table, and say, well, what might it be like if it is going to be a dry spring? Might I do something a little bit different? So I think in the very near future we have a lot of potential to use this new, I don't like the word predictive, the projection, to experiment with what you might do, so that, you know, forewarned is forearmed. So if you have that sort of better information to hand, you can make better tactical decisions. And I think that capacity is developing very quickly.
Thank you. Laura, after 10 years of no-till farming in Argentina, what was so good that persuaded you to go for another 25?
Yeah. It's an amazing question. That the first year, all of us know that to be pioneer is so expensive. So imagine that you make all the mistake and you need 1 year to repair the mistake. And in agriculture, we have a lot of variables, so it's so hard to change the system. Oh, was because no-till, or was because I decreased the quantity of times going to the field? So the first five years was horrible. But something that I forgot to explain, that in the corner of the coin, in Argentina, the farmers has strong tax pressure. We call retention, and it's directly impacting in the cash flow of the farmers at what time it begins the retention. So the farmers has a strong pressure for cost. So keep learning. And we have some accelerators, like a new genetic seed that improve very fast the curve of adoption. So the first 5 years, horrible. The next 5 is like an explosion of happiness regarding, because you see very green crops, a lot of green money in the pocket of the farmers, the government take it apart, but the people happy because the economy was moving forward. This was the first year. Yeah.
Jack, it's about tenacity, it's about being open-minded, as you said. It's about both.
Yeah, I think maybe we could give some time for some other questions. I don't want,
Fair enough.
these guys know a lot more about these topics than I do.
Fair. There's a question here, number 1, please, over there.
Hello, I'm a young farmer. I'm 19. I hope the microphone works. I think it does. This is usually my normal voice as well. So my question relates to how we display the narrative. So it is mainly for Jack, but it's actually for all of you, really. Because in the growing age that we find ourselves in, where the internet is more important than ever, where you have to protect against misinformation, and where you actually have to get the message out to everybody, not just the people who are here or even at home, but you need to get the message out to people who don't even have a network connection, to the people who are in not spots. I, for example, am in the bottom 2% in terms of my access to a stable network connection and mobile cellular data in this country. And people like me, if I was not here, I would not be seeing this information. I would not be seeing the world-leading information that is being presented by Mike. I would not be seeing the narrative that Jack is presenting. I would not be as open-minded, because I would not be as able to be open-minded because I purely do not have that access. What are you going to do in the age of the internet that we find ourselves in to protect farming from misinformation, to put forward a positive and authentic case for farming, and to make sure that everybody has the accessibility to be able to contribute to these collective discussions? Thank you very much.
Good job.
I think we only have 8 minutes. I mean, there are a couple of ways to at least start the conversation. I mean, one is that if you don't participate in the conversation, then you shouldn't be upset that it doesn't have anything to do with your real interests. And I think too many just don't participate. And there's an opportunity for millions of voices here in the UK and hundreds of millions globally that could be involved. The other, though, is, again, how we talk about this concept of polarization. Because just even when we talk about the term misinformation, it assumes that the other information is wrong. And you're trying to explain misinformation to people. Well, that means you're trying to convince them they're wrong, as opposed to having a conversation about what the world could be. And if I'd had more time, I would have talked about my own confirmation bias. I would have talked about how our brains lead us astray. And one of the things, if you leave here remembering one thing, it's do not trust your brain. It's lying to you all the time, and we have very little humility about how our own brains are acting in our own, or not in our own self-interest.
Maybe, Laura, about Africa. I mean, you had the experience of working in Africa, and I guess that's relevant.
I assume that the misinformation has several origins. So one of them that is not obvious is that a lot of information are creating in the middle of the process that the farmers or the young generation need to use it. So we need to be open to understand that nobody has the future. We need to build the future with the best information. And the other one needs to be something that promote people to be involved on. In Africa, it's another story because it's not about intellectual issues or capacity to access to information. It's around how to take the people feed, to develop the brain to, after that, take our problems. But here, and in our scenario, I believe that it's not one-side problem. Need to be two-side problem, and this is awareness sometimes. So it's not a lack of information, probably. It's a lack of both. A little no easy access to the misinformation and a little lack of openness to embrace and to be critical with the thinking.
Mike.
Thanks so much for the question. I share your pain. I live in an area of 1 megabyte a second. It is dire. So yeah, I share your pain. But also you have to be aware that across the generations, there are a lot of older people who do not use the internet to its capacity as well. So I think the younger generation can try and help the older generation use some of the internet resources so that we can actually learn. And what I say to my kids is challenge the information, question it. Where does it come from? What's the motivation behind it? And we can teach ourselves critical evaluation. I'm a scientist and I have to apply critical evaluation all the time. I think we all do that in our daily lives and trying to understand what sources of information that you can trust. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges for education across the world is how do we get our young people to actually critically evaluate the sources of information, not just take things as fact. Science is about fact, or as close to fact as we can get to it, whereas unfortunately what we're hearing a lot is just opinion. And what I think for the young people can help some of the older generation actually learn some of those techniques to sort of say, oh, that's your opinion, but here's the facts, and actually have good rational discussions and debates as well. So thank you for your question.
Well, and there's a great book called May Contain Lies, and it points out that a story is not a fact is not data, data is not evidence, and evidence alone is not proof, and there's an entire hierarchy that we need to work through.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Number 4 here. Yeah.
Hey everyone. Oh, is it working?
Yeah.
Jess Radner here as part of the scholarship group. Really grateful to be here for the first time. Jack, you mentioned that we're very impressionable when we're young and minds can be changed. So do you think the national curriculum plays a part in educating on what the positive impacts of farming can be, and whether those people, the students now, they'll be 20s to 30s by the time we reach 2050, so they might be the people that are involved within the industry. So do you think that plays a part?
Yeah, I think absolutely. I think if you look at the work of Hannah Ritchie, who works on Our World in Data and who wrote the book, let's see, Not the End of the World. I think one of the things she points out is that, she left school feeling that the world was doomed. And, it really took a long time for her to realize that in many ways things were good and getting better, just not fast enough, and that the narrative and the stories that we tell. And so I think one of the things that could just happen is not just around agriculture generally, but just around science and technology, that we can solve big problems if we work together, and that things aren't necessarily doomed if we have hope that we can achieve them. And I think that mindset would play a big part.
I do have, looking into the time, a final question that is in the app, and let's go through that fairly quickly if we can. Can we measure resilience?
Can we measure resilience?
It's a big question.
I have to say yes, we have to. We have to be able to measure resilience. Developing the metrics through which we do that will be a challenge. I've been thinking, what will OFC 2050 look like? It's only 24 years away, and I would like to think that perhaps the title might be "We Achieved Resilience." But can resilience be measured? Yes, because we can measure people's behaviour. We can measure changes in patterns of behaviour. We can measure soil quality improvement. There's a whole range of things that we can measure that gives us really good indicators to ensure that we are progressing towards resilience. Opening up the debate about what resilience really looks like on a completely global scale, balancing of geopolitics, world peace, that's a different thing. But in terms of an agricultural and a land use context, yes, we can measure resilience.
Laura.
From my point of view, we need to separate in 3 types of the resilience. Resilience of the soils, the natural resources, and easy to measure. How many carbon you have, how many biodiversity, how many different things, how many water you use to produce X kilos of something. That this is one part of the resilience. The second one is that the farmer feels resilient. And it's a lot of things about how is the state of the soul to be encouraged to move forward. And so this is, from my point of view, something that we need to measure. And third, the resilience of the system, because all of us are parts of one system. And if something changed, that like geopolitical challenge, and United States closed the market, and South America open, and China, blah, how many time and how many money we need to move forward with our system to be our society happy.
Jack, yeah.
Yeah, and I guess I would just add to that that when we think about resilience, we also need to think about trade-offs. And you can be more resilient in one aspect, but you could be less resilient in another. And so the more food you produce in the UK, the less risk there is of global trade disruptions. But if the problem is here, you're more susceptible. And so it doesn't mean that you can't make decisions, but you need to understand the implications of the trade-offs and the resilient choices you make.
Thank you very much. I think this is a good point to finish this session. I would like to thank the speakers and for answering the questions and for your presentation. Thank you.